SoftBank was once the biggest tech investor in the world. They made over $100 billion from Alibaba and had invested in Uber, NVIDIA, and even OpenAI. Then it collapsed, and now they are hanging on for dear life. What happened? Well, it's all thanks to one man who decided to gamble with over $100 billion. Okay, but firstly, what the heck even is SoftBank? Well, it's essentially a gigantic and notably risky investment firm and the child of Masayoshi Son from Japan. Right now, he's the 48th wealthiest man in the world, but even more interestingly, for the longest time, he had lost more money than anyone else in history, only dethroned recently by Elon Musk. And we need to look no further than Masayoshi Son's first big bet in the dot-com bubble. You can probably guess where this is going. After a few profitable business ventures including SoftBank, Son invested big in Yahoo in 1995. As the stock exploded, Son was, for a brief moment, the richest man on earth. Of course, it then crashed, but his more important investment was soon after, and the circumstances were strange. In 2000, during an entrepreneur speed dating session arranged by SoftBank, Son met an interesting man. He had an exciting startup which he described as the digital yellow pages to match buyers and sellers. This was Jack Ma, founder of Alibaba. The company was 6 months old, had minimal revenue, yet was drawing thousands of registrants a day. Son was captivated, yet for another reason. It was the look in his eye. It was an animal smell. It was the same when we invested in Yahoo when there were still only 5 to 6 people. I invested it based on my sense of smell. This is an instinct of Son's that he often talks about, how he can sense the gut instinct of an underdog entrepreneur. Regardless, Ma and Son struck a deal, $20 million for 30% of Alibaba. Over a decade later in 2014, Alibaba performed an IPO and reached a market cap of $200 billion, putting Son's investment at around $75 billion. By 2018, it was worth $132 billion. Masayoshi Son had made one of the greatest business bets in history. He grew a reputation for an aggressive, risky tech investor. Masayoshi Son would soon become the richest person in Japan, and now he was ready for his next big bet. It began in October 2016. Masayoshi Son announced his newest plan, and it was by far the most ambitious: the Vision Fund, a fund for tech startups.
You know, guys, some say that Masa is the single most influential person when it comes to the development of technology in the world.
Son believed he had an ability to see the future and bet on the most ambitious entrepreneurs. And everyone bought his vision. The public investment fund from Saudi Arabia invested $45 billion. Son's company SoftBank contributed another $45 billion, and Apple invested a few billion. The Vision Fund was a $100 billion juggernaut. This was the future. This was the big bet. It had Masayoshi Son as the chairman, he had infinite backing and the greatest minds behind it. And to his credit, Masayoshi Son did have some great predictions.
All of the 70 companies that we have invested in the last year and a half with the Vision Fund, they're all AI-centric.
In the fund were rising tech stars like NVIDIA, OpenAI, Uber, WeWork, Slack, ByteDance, DoorDash, Didi, and many, many more. Yet his execution left investors scratching their heads. SoftBank missed out on AI with NVIDIA, but you don't have to. That's why I'm excited to talk about today's sponsor, Lovable. Lovable is Europe's fastest growing startup, and it's no accident. It lets you build full-stack apps by simply describing what you need. No coding skills, no engineering team. You just write your idea in plain English, and Lovable generates everything, front-end, back-end, even integrations with platforms like Supabase or Stripe. It's like having a full-stack developer, but instant. If you've ever had a killer idea but no way to actually build it, this is your solution. Now, to be clear, this isn't about replacing engineers. It's about proving your idea has legs before sinking time and money into building the wrong thing. Need a product page with Stripe payments, inventory tracking, and automated emails? Done. Want to test a scheduling app with calendar sync and reminder emails? Easy. Looking to set up a newsletter sign-up flow with gated content? Lovable handles that too. Whether it's fintech, SaaS, e-commerce, or media, Lovable lets you build, test, and iterate faster than teams still stuck waiting on dev cycles. So if you've got a startup idea, product concept, or side project you've been holding off on, now is the time to build it. Click the link in the description and use code LOGICALLYANSWERED to try Lovable for yourself with a discount. Once again, that's code LOGICALLYANSWERED, link in the description. All you need is the vision. Lovable handles the rest. Thank you to Lovable for supporting our videos. In early 2019, SoftBank sold their entire stake in one of those companies, NVIDIA. They had paid $700 million for 4.9% and sold it for $3.3 billion. That's a 4.7x return on investment in just 2 years. Pretty good, or it would have been.
Is NVIDIA, a $4 trillion market cap, which no company's ever done, Jim.
You're probably cringing as much as I am. 4.9% of NVIDIA way back before the AI boom. Their 4.9% investment would have been worth between $150 and $160 billion. Their return on investment, if they had held, would have been 231x or 23,000%. Masayoshi Son could have had another Alibaba situation, and definitely feels it. He has called NVIDIA the fish that got away, and to be fair, it was a very big fish. But remember what he said in 2019?
They're all using the power of AI for the evolution.
Masayoshi Son wouldn't stop talking about AI long before the AI boom, yet NVIDIA was also for many years all in on AI. In their 2016 report, they stated, "The impact of AI on the tech industry and society will be exponential." They were pivoting their entire business to surround AI, but Masayoshi Son jumped ship right before the finish line. Why? Well, that brings us to Son's other problems. Just 2 years in, he was under a bit of pressure. The Vision Fund had made some huge bets, but there were no real returns. Some startups like Uber were growing, though still bleeding through cash. Others were showing troubling losses and weren't growing as fast as Son had hoped. To make matters worse, in late 2018, NVIDIA had also dropped after the crypto mining crash. Son needed to show a return, especially since he was planning a sequel, the Vision Fund 2, which would also need investment. So with a 4.7x ROI locked in, Son sold NVIDIA, a decision he'd regret for the rest of his life. But unfortunately, this wouldn't be the end of the Vision Fund troubles. As it turns out, some of the companies in the Vision Fund were a bit strange. One of these was WeWork.
Communication with the power of AI.
How does WeWork fit into that with the power of AI?
It was right at home in the crowd-sharing explosion like Airbnb and Uber. It was a tech startup that leased office space to other startups, freelancers, or those who needed co-working space. Except, it didn't own any real estate. It just subleased the office space out to other companies. What's even stranger is the CEO Adam Neumann and how he got his funding. He gave Masayoshi Son a 12-minute tour, who then invited him to his car. He then sketched a deal on his iPad, an investment of $4.4 billion in WeWork. He told Neumann to make WeWork 10 times bigger than your original plan, and to recognize that in a fight, being crazy is better than being smart, and that WeWork wasn't being crazy enough. I suppose Adam smelled like an entrepreneur. In total, SoftBank poured around $10 to $12 billion into WeWork, some of which came from the Vision Fund. But the other investors weren't too happy about this, and their hesitation was soon justified with the WeWork IPO. As the details came out, investors realized Adam Neumann had been doing some questionable things in his startup. And with a sudden multi-billion-dollar investment and based on Son's suggestion, he went even more crazy. For one, he trademarked the word "we", then sold it to his own company for about $6 million. He also cashed out on $700 million in stock before the IPO even listed. He also structured the company so he owned super shares, each having 20 votes, meaning even after the IPO, Adam would control at least 50% of the voting rights. He also spent millions on a private jet, and all of that is on top of an arbitrary $47 billion valuation for a company that was still bleeding cash. Remember, they didn't own any real estate, they just leased it. Even with billions from Masayoshi Son, the financials were looking troubling. I suppose if you poured $10 billion into an unproven, unprofitable startup based on a gut feeling or smell, this can happen. The IPO was postponed, Adam was forced to retire, and of course, the private jet was sold. There was even crazier stuff going on at WeWork that someone wrote an entire book about. But even after one of his biggest bets had failed, Masayoshi Son didn't have a chance to breathe. As it turns out, it wasn't just WeWork having problems, it was nearly all of his investments. Over the years, we've amassed 170 million views, but we still haven't reached 1 million subscribers. That conversion rate is even worse than investing in WeWork. My dream is to reach 1 million subscribers by the end of this year, and if you watching right now subscribe, that dream can actually become a reality. Multiple companies in the fund were cutting staff as they lost millions upon millions. Uber, one of the biggest, just had an IPO, but their market cap had dropped and was largely sideways. It was still losing billions every year. Investors in the Vision Fund were starting to get impatient, and many were pushing for more transparency and change. But little change came. Instead, it came to losses. As 2020 rolled around, many of these fragile, cash-burning startups collapsed in the pandemic. Even companies you would think would thrive here, like Uber, saw a huge drop in revenue. In May 2020, SoftBank reported the fund had lost $18 billion, with many of the fund staff being laid off. Son had dug himself into a hole, yet for some reason, he decided to keep digging. On an investor call, he compared himself to Jesus. He said that, just like Jesus, he is misunderstood. He admitted his WeWork investment was foolish, but said that if the performance of his investments improved, his reputation would improve as well. Despite his efforts, this didn't help his reputation, which he needed for his next big plan. Remember the big sequel, The Vision Fund 2? Well, there wasn't as much excitement this time around. Masayoshi Son had a $108 billion goal for this fund, but it raised less than half. Even worse, it was all funded by SoftBank itself. Son couldn't secure any external investors. No one wanted in on this disaster. But there was a glimpse of hope. To everyone's surprise, one of the Vision Fund startups brought a return, Coupang. The e-commerce platform was exploding and it was called the Amazon of South Korea. $2 billion was invested from the Vision Fund, and Coupang had a gigantic IPO reaching $85 billion in market cap. This was a near $37 billion profit. But Masayoshi Son didn't have time to celebrate. Despite this huge profit, it was only a small chunk of the Vision Fund which was overwhelmingly underperforming. Even with Coupang's return and their now profitability, it wasn't enough. Uber was still losing billions, and when they finally did make a profit, investors were underwhelmed. WeWork finally performed an IPO in 2021 and reached a market cap of $8 billion, far below Son's original valuation, marking a colossal loss, and it only went down from there. The other investments were much the same, shedding cash left and right or just collapsing like FTX. In 2022, SoftBank reported a $27.4 billion loss for the Vision Fund for the previous year. Its portfolio of stocks was plummeting. Then things began to accelerate. The fund lost $23 billion just for the April to June quarter alone. By the end of that year, they had lost $32 billion. Not even OpenAI's explosion could save the fund. SoftBank began scaling back their investments and in the third quarter only invested $300 million into new startups. Sounds like a lot, but that's just 10% of what they invested the previous year. But it was too late. Investors had absolutely had it with Masayoshi Son. He may have had some great bets in the past, but he was being reckless. The Wall Street Journal called SoftBank a big loser, and Bloomberg described the fund as Masayoshi Son's broken business model. He was even called a gambling addict. Son's dream fund had collapsed. The one company that could have saved the Vision Fund and made it all worth it was NVIDIA. Son was humiliated, but at least all of this has humbled him. "I am ashamed of myself for being so elated by big profits in the past," he said. He was arrogant and prideful about his past success, notably that huge Alibaba return. But going back to his own example, as Jesus said, those who exalt themselves will be humbled. Maybe he'll change his mindset moving forward, but only time will tell. Another company that had virtually unlimited resources but is still burning billions is Temu. Check out this video to learn more, but until then, I'm Hari and I'll see you guys on the next one.